Number 5. The Brethren. Do you feel like the modern world has got you down? Got you running around, feeling overwhelmed? Perhaps you need a break from it all and you want to get away. I want to go back to a simpler time. Well then perhaps the Brethren is the movement you've been looking for. Founded by Jim T. Roberts, the movement seeks to shed all of the convenience and accommodations of modern living, with its members instead choosing to live as vagrants, drifting on the edge of society, away from the prying eye of the modern world. Their leader believes that in order to be guaranteed a spot in heaven, one must purify themselves. And to the Brethren, this means purifying themselves of just about every facet of modern living. As part of their renouncement of all modern living, Brethren must forsake all of their family, friends, their jobs, their livelihoods, all in favor of their new brothers. You aren't allowed to partake in any material goods of any kind. Sew your own clothing and eat what you can scavenge. This particularly grisly habit is what gave the cult its enduring nickname of garbage eaters for their tendency to dumpster dive. You're not even allowed to laugh, celebrate, or play, as all celebrations must be saved for the return of the Savior at the end of the world. Although giving those conditions, I'm not sure what you'd have to laugh about. It goes as far too as members being barred from receiving treatment or medicine, even for common curable illnesses. Because members are forced to cut themselves off from their families, oftentimes members disappear without their family members ever even getting to know what happened. As such, groups have sprung up to try and reconnect Brethren to their families and hopefully get them a dinner that didn't come out of a dumpster. Why not toss a subscribe our way and join our group here? Our teachings are scary videos every day, and the only thing you have to give us is a subscribe, and if you're feeling really generous, maybe a like too. Let's keep going.
Coming in at number 4, Marie Laveau. Born Marie Catherine Laveau on September the 10th, 1801 in the French Quarter, Marie Laveau was a Louisiana Creole practitioner of voodoo, renowned across the southern United States and incredibly prolific in the New Orleans area. She was the daughter of Marguerite de Cantal and Charles Laveau Trudeau, a renowned politician. Marie Laveau practiced the arts of root work and herbalism combined with the conjuring arts of Native American and African spiritualism, gaining her the title of the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. The full extent of her voodoo practicing is unknown, but several historical records state that Mary Laveau traveled the streets of New Orleans with a mystical presence, stirring an air of fear in the locals with her seeing eye of knowledge. It is believed that she was often in the presence of her familiar, a snake named Zombie, thought to be an avatar of the lower god Damballa. Through her divinations and displays of herbalism, she became an important figure in Creole culture, a potent blend of folklore and ancient magics.
Number 3. Realism. Realism is the teaching that humanity was birthed by a hyper-advanced race of aliens called the Elohim, who genetically engineered us as their children. Our most famous religious leaders over the years were Elohim human hybrids whose wondrous abilities and powers were mislabeled as prophets. It's said that by 2035, if Realism's followers have achieved the tenets correctly and fulfilled the movement's teaching by spreading its message and building an embassy to welcome its 39 prophets. The group rose to prominence in the 1970s when its leader, Claude Vorion, who called himself Rayo, claims he had an experience with a UFO where a spacecraft flying overhead was full of beings who told him about humanity's future and past and handed him a Bible and told him it was his mission to build that embassy. Now all of this sounds like pretty standard cult stuff, worshipping aliens who are secret progenitors, but where things get pretty interesting and worthy of note is that around 2002, a company called Clonaid, with direct ties to Realism, claimed to have done the impossible and cloned a baby girl, appropriately named Eve. Immediately, it spurned all kind of controversy, led to several investigations, discussions about the ethics and morality of the situation. But despite all this, no actual evidence of the clone baby ever came up. Eve isn't the only alleged baby birthed this way through Clonaid, with several claims of Clonaid brand clones being produced since the original story in 2002, all with dubious claims, including controversial rapper Kid Buu, who claims to have been born there. So either Eve is still hiding somewhere, or maybe it was a bit of an exaggeration. Regardless, Clonaid charges up to $200,000 for their services, which might seem a bit expensive, but hey, you're getting a great deal on a clone. You're gonna make your money back on that. So if anyone's got a piggy bank just weighing them down, please send me a message and then get back to me and introduce me to you and your clone. Number 2, the Church of Bible Understanding. Hey, real quick for me, what's your favorite Seinfeld episode? Yeah, I probably could have guessed it was the comeback or the contest, and those are both great answers. But what about the Czechs, where George gets involved with that group of carpet cleaners who end up trying to recruit for Occult, and he's all mad they want his boss, but they don't want him? That's the kind of shenanigan that could only happen to Costanza. Turns out that episode was based on a real group called the Church of Bible Understanding, although at the time they were going by Christian Brothers Carpet Cleaners, no doubt where the idea came from. This undertaking was one of the group's many noble business ventures, including a used van business and a New York chain of used antique stores. Like most cults, the group was led by a charismatic figurehead, one Stuart Trail, who maintained to his followers that only he was capable of understanding the Word of God and understanding how to annoy George Costanza. Their leader was expelled from the Pentecostal church he worshipped at in the early 70s, and after his expulsion, refused to give up the dream and formed his own church, promising a communal lifestyle of salvation. And if reports from former members are to be believed, hard work for below minimum wage. Members were isolated from their friends, families, and communities and encouraged to devote themselves wholly to the church. Besides a less than flattering appearance on Seinfeld, the group most recently made headlines after an orphanage they built in Haiti had burned to the ground, after several claims that orphanages the group had been producing in Haiti had been extremely substandard, shoddy, overcrowded, and dirty. The leader, Stuart Trail, passed away in 2018. Current estimates suggested the group has dwindled down from thousands of members in its heyday to just dozens now. And there's no word if Larry David was ever a member or associated. Number 1. The Nuevian Nation. Dwight York had a dream. Like many Americans, he believed in simple things, like amassing an army to help him fight Satan amongst the stars. Let me back that up for you just a little bit and introduce you to the Nuevian Nation, or the United Nuevian Nation of Moors. Adding just a twist of Christianity, African rituals, and a heavy dose of Egyptian mythology mixed with aliens, Dwight York had a perfect recipe for a wild cult story. The nation believed that they needed to prepare themselves for an inevitable duel of the fates among the stars, and that the 144,000 chosen ones would accompany Dwight into outer space for the fate of the galaxy, zooming away on a flying city to Orion to fight Satan. Now, I have no comment about any of that. Maybe it was the cult of personality, maybe it was the promise that you could potentially get involved in a star war, but this was a surprisingly popular movement around rural Georgia, where York built up a massive compound that looked a bit like a pavilion out of your favorite Egypt-themed amusement park, and bringing in members in droves. As the numbers grew, the mythology grew, incorporating cloning, racial theory, anti-government conspiracy, and a whole lot more. But the dreams of the Starfarers would be cut short when an investigation in 2002 revealed a horrifying truth: that their leader Dwight York was involved in a massive human trafficking operation said to have been comprised of as many of 1,000 people. On May 8, 2002, the Sheriff's Department of Georgia, with the aid of the FBI, shut the entire operation down. York was arrested and sentenced to a life sentence where he's still serving out his 135 years. One Georgia sheriff involved, Sheriff Sills, described the trafficking operation as the best kept secret in Georgia I'd seen in my 47 years as a police officer. The compound was seized and swiftly destroyed. Despite all this though, there are still members out there waiting.
Kicking us off at number 5, we've got the Global Occult Coalition. The GOC is like a sister organization to the Foundation, a scrappy, violent, often short-sighted sister. No relation. After World War II, there was plenty going on in the world, plenty of folks scrambling to hang on to little pieces of power and safety. This meant that all sorts of splintery pieces from the powers that be found each other and created a new alliance. Remnants from defecting occultists, psychics, priests, and scientists from all sides of the war came together to form a worldwide task force. Where the Foundation chooses to secure, contain, and protect, the Global Occult Coalition decides to destroy. To combat the spread of paranormal entities and protect the general public, the GOC will annihilate anything they deem to be dangerous. Nowadays, it functions similarly to an anomalous United Nations, an openly political organization that takes actions to affect the world at large. They see themselves as the police of the paranormal world and pride themselves on the destruction of supernatural entities. The GOC achieves this through their use of experimental high-tech weaponry often received from their benefactors. Over the years, they they have destroyed many SCPs before the Foundation even had a chance to contain them. This puts the two organizations at odds, but even so, they often work together towards mutual goals. Teamwork doesn't mean that they get along though, as there have been many times that the two organizations have really butted heads. Plus, as an entirely efficient eraser of entities, the GOC holds the Foundation in contempt for their use of containment on SCPs. Too soft, too weak, they think. But what's worse, containing entities with a risk of breach, or outright destroying them, mitigating risk but permanently removing an element from our world.
Number 4. Happy Science. Happy Science, formerly known as the Institute for Research in Human Happiness, is a Japanese New Age religion that's sort of a loot bag for as many religious concepts as you can think of. In Happy Science, all gods that have been worshipped throughout history across various religions were actually all the same god, named El Cantare, roughly translating to the singer. The group's founder, Ryoho Okawa, just happens to be the incarnation of all these holy deities manifested as one man. He also claims to have the energies of various celebrities inside him, including Freddie Mercury and former US presidents. The group preaches happiness, obviously. Following the group's mantra, in order to obtain happiness, one must practice the principles of happiness known as the fourfold path: love that gives, wisdom, self-reflection, and progress. Now, Happy Science isn't just some fringe group in a tent in the backwoods. Rough estimates suggest that the group pulls inwards of $45 million a year. Sounds like there's some kind of profit happening here. That's a little pun for you. Happy Science has a full-on media division, producing several animated and live-action films, and publishing books numbering close to the thousands, mostly being transcriptions of Okawa's lectures about happiness, spirituality, and occasionally aliens, as a major part of the group's belief revolve around UFOs, aliens, and other cosmic entities. The group is fairly widespread, boasting temples across the world in various continents. The group's statistics claim that there are 11 million members worldwide, although more conservative estimates put it around 30,000 worldwide. Regardless, Happy Science is something that's clearly making a lot of people happy.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Dr. Wondertainment. This one is hard to classify, as so much of it seems to be shrouded in mystery. Is it an individual, or a collective? Or is it an individual in charge of a collective, like an SCP Willy Wonka, presiding over all sorts of hypothetical paranormal Oompa Loompas, perhaps? Regardless of what it is behind the scenes, it is known that the good doctor produces anomalous artifacts and entities that resemble children's toys. The nature of these things varies widely, but all of them were clearly intended to be used by children. Are they safe to be used by children? Usually absolutely not. Whether this comes from a place of misguided wonder or terrifying sadism is hard to say, although it is quite obvious that Dr. Wondertainment is indeed a capitalist construct. Collect, find, buy, these are all calls to action Wondertainment might put to use. For a collective supposedly obsessed with childhood wonder and imagination, they are very, very concerned with intellectual property and the like. You gotta make money somewhere, I guess. From collectible human beings with strange anomalous qualities, to masks that make anomalies turn into human children, there's all sorts of weird and wacky stuff going on here, from heartwarming to horrifying. Also, there's a potential connection to the O5 Council and the Scarlet King depending on your headcanon. The fun and wonder side of this is real, but there is definitely some darkness creeping behind it. Add in a connection to the mythical factory and you've got a pretty creepy mystery indeed. Plus, the fact that these anomalies are all disguised as kids' toys is very dangerous. Nobody needs children accessing paranormal forces, okay? Coming in at number 2, Marshall Carter and Dark Limited. This is a club based in London who caters to the super rich. Through their membership, MCD has been able to develop extensive political and financial ties worldwide. This often causes many problems for the Foundation. At the behest of their wealthy members, Marshall Carter and Dark Limited will collect rare and obscure paranormal items and provide exclusive, expensive, and unparalleled experiences. This of course comes with all sorts of risks, including revealing anomalous entities to the public. Often these activities will result in conflict with the Foundation. Whether it's procuring an SCP before the Foundation can, or actively lobbying for the breach of skips of interest, this calamitous country club causes all sorts of problems. They're not known for use of force though. No, not when financial and political pressure will do. And if that's not enough, they have been known to hire outside agents, ones that will be very difficult to connect to the main firm. Containment breaches caused by MCD Limited are relatively common, which is quite dangerous. Money and social pressure go a long way, especially when they're being applied by a shadowy procurer of extraterrestrial experiences. 2 containment sites were almost brought to public attention after the Foundation refused access to MCD members. Rich brats are hard to say no to because they'll always use insane amounts of money and power as leverage. Of course, being rich and powerful, it's very hard to acquire useful information about this group. Agents who run into members of the group are advised to maintain their cover story and not reveal Foundation ties or SCP info. Who knows what they would do or pay to get their hands on information. And finally, number 1, the Chaos Insurgency. The scariest enemies are the ones that come from within. The Chaos Insurgency is a splinter group of the Foundation created by a rogue cell that went AWOL, taking with them several dangerous SCP objects. Since their betrayal, they have become a major player on the world stage, using anomalies for benefit and to consolidate power. They don't only deal in anomalies either, they're also well known for weapons dealing and intelligence work. The Chaos Insurgency will make use of authoritarian regimes in poor and developing countries to further their goals. They like to use the populations of said nations like D-class subjects and manipulate the economy and world events to maintain poverty and war. This ensures that they can continue their experimentation, conscript forces easily, and make deals with opposing forces. Since severing ties with the Foundation, they've acquired many anomalous objects, most of which are unknown to anybody outside of the organization. However, some notable SCPs they took with them while defecting include the Staff of Hermes, which warps physical and chemical properties of matter, and the Bell of Entropy, which can cause various destructive effects based on where it's struck. These items lead people to think that most of the anomalous items they collect have high potential for direct utility, none of the difficult to contain or impractical ones the Foundation works so hard to contain. Right now, they've gone totally ghost. Their base of operations is unknown, as well as any current leaders. All the Foundation knows for sure is that the Chaos Insurgency is directly antagonistic to the Foundation, often using deadly force to prevent containment of anomalies. In fact, members of the Insurgency may very well have infiltrated the Foundation and are lying in wait right now. Watch the containment units. The Foundation is not alone, and definitely not the most dangerous secret group out there. They better keep some allies satisfied. It seems like they can use all the help they can get.
Kicking off at number 5, Alistair Crowley. Born Edward Alexander Crowley on the 12th of October 1875, this guy is perhaps one of the most well-known occultists in the modern era, who identified himself as the prophet entrusted with guiding humanity into the Aeon of Horus, an occultist idea that existence is split into several defined ages of magic that was propagated in Crowley's own founded religion, Thelema. Alistair Crowley was born into a wealthy family in Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, which seems to be becoming a theme here at Top 5 Scary Videos, because that's also near where I grew up as a kid. Spooky, right? Crowley's life wasn't a boring one, that's a definite, collecting the titles of occultist, magician, poet, painter, novelist, even mountaineer, and was integral in fleshing out the parameters of modern occultism. During a trip to Cairo, Egypt, Crowley claimed to have been contacted by a supernatural entity named Awas that laid out to him the Book of the Law over a 3-day period, the sacred text that formed the basis for Thelema. Crowley believed in the power of magic, spelt with a K, which was an alignment of science and mysticism. He described this magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Coming in at number 4, are we cool yet? I ask myself this every day. The answer is always no. Now that I've got the requisite self-deprecation out of the way, we can talk about this collective of anomalous artists, also known as anartists, but I can't see that catching on. Folks in AWCY often obtain and produce anomalous objects and entities, using them to create art installations. Usually these are placed for maximum public exposure, which puts a lot of people at risk. Plenty of the exhibitions have proven to be fatal to bystanders. God damn it, Banksy. Wherever they go, they will leave the phrase, "Are we cool yet?" somewhere in some form. Keep an eye open for that if you value your life more than street art. With no real central structure to their society, they rely on independent cells to get things going. Artists tend to work independently. They don't want people breathing down their necks unless forced to do so otherwise. This led to plenty of offshoots and lots of artists making art revolving around anomalous objects, beings, and phenomena. Because of the lack of structure, there isn't a real way to describe the whole of AWCY. However, with members of the public often falling victim to their artwork, the movement has often been labeled as a bunch of art terrorists, placing anomalous art in random galleries, creating public pieces, even splintering off further and having anomalous memes made. It's too easy to stumble across a piece of this paranormal pastiche, so be careful out there.
Next up at number 3, Roger Bolingbroke. And we're going deep into British history to find this guy, who was wrapped up in one of the most renowned cases of alleged treasonous sorcery against the English monarchy. I say treasonous sorcery, but in all reality, all this guy really did was write a horoscope. A magic horoscope that can predict when you die. Yeah. Roger Bolingbroke was a genius, incredibly well educated in the fields of astronomy and astrology. He was also a cleric, a magister, and an alleged necromancer, a practitioner of the arts of the dead, which is where he met his demise. Bolingbroke was part of Humphrey of Lancaster's household, the first Duke of Gloucester, and was the personal magister to the Duke's wife, Eleanor Cobham, who could pretty much have had her own spot on this list all on her own. The two of them, alongside a woman named Marjorie Germain, also known as the Witch of Eye, conspired to divine the death of Henry VI, the then King of England. As you can imagine, things didn't go to plan, and Roger Bolingbroke was hung, drawn and quartered, and his head was stuck on a spike on the London Bridge. With all that power of divination, he didn't see his own death coming. Funny how that works, isn't it? Swinging in at number 2, Ursula Southill, who is definitely someone that saw her own death coming. In fact, she pretty much saw everything coming, if you're to believe the power of Ursula Southill's prophecy. Better known as Mother Shipton, Ursula Southill was born in 1488 and died in 1561, although publication of her written prophecies didn't appear until 1641, 80 years after her reported death. You may already know the legend of Mother Shipton, an ancient woman who allegedly predicted 9/11 and the whole 2012 Mayan calendar thing, the majority of which is pure speculation and fakery from sensationalists. The real legend of Mother Shipton began in a cave in Knaresborough, Yorkshire, alongside the petrifying well, a natural phenomena that causes slow calcification. She was a soothsayer, a wise woman who practiced herbalist medicine, telling fortunes for travellers and writing her esoteric prophecies in scripture for the Yorkshire locals. It wasn't until the Great Fire of London in 1666 that society paid any heed to her, although throughout her life the northern region of Yorkshire had already cemented her power of divination into their folklore. After London had burned to a crisp, a few members of the royal family noticed a stark coincidence. In a book that they'd read, the writings of a long dead Yorkshire mystic who saw in a vision the great city of London burning in the year 1666. And finally, at our number 1 spot, King Solomon. And it has to be perhaps the most mysterious and prominent figure in the whole of occultism. Both the prototype and archetype of the warrior and the magician, King Solomon is most widely associated with the Seal of Solomon, an ancient ring that purportedly had the power to banish and control demonic forces. He appears in many ancient texts throughout history: the Hebrew Bible, the Quran and the Talmud, the central text of Rabbinic Judaism, all of which point to the fact that Solomon was an incredibly powerful and wise figure. In more contemporary themes, he is often associated with Freemasonry and the building of the Masonic Temple. In history though, his story is much more vague, although several texts allegedly allude to the all-powerful artifacts that were bestowed upon him to have control over the mystical arts. Although the most famous is his seal, the others are his key, also known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, a series of coded pentacles often associated with demonology, and his table, a tablet of stone that was said to be held by the Visigoths, yet was lost during the conquest of Iberia, fading into legend.